Imagine the terror of a 13-year-old autistic boy snatched from his own neighborhood, driven 300 miles and dumped in a strange city, all because he dared to walk alone. HOA President Patricia Evans declared him a menace, wielding vague private bylaws to mask what was nothing short of a ruthless power play. She had no idea the boy's father was the district attorney of Harris County, Texas, a man who wouldn't just bring his son home, he'd bring the entire HOA C crashing down. What unfolds is a tale of shocking twists, fierce retribution, and justice roaring back with undeniable force. No parent should ever jail awake to a stranger's voice on the phone, announcing that their child, 13 years old, autistic and vulnerable, has been found wandering alone in a city 300 miles from home. Especially not when that parent is Mark Hensley, a seasoned prosecutor whose life's work is to defend the broken and punish the cruel. But when the victim is your own flesh and blood, justice takes on a raw personal edge that no courtroom can tame. It was 7:23 a.m. when Mark's phone rang. He stood in his kitchen still groggy, nursing a tepid coffee in his pajama pants hair. A mess from a restless night. The screen flashed an unfamiliar Arkansas number, probably a telemarketer he figured, ready to swipe it away. But something, maybe that gut instinct honed from years of sniffing out lies, made him answer Miss Hensley. The voice came hesitant and worn. "We found your son, Ethan." Mark stopped breathing, his hand tightening around the mug. "He's safe here in Fort Smith, Arkansas." He said he was taken walking in his neighborhood back in Texas. Someone grabbed him. He said, "They told me I couldn't walk alone and took me away for disobeying." The words hit like a punch. Fort Smith, 300 miles from their quiet HOA C near D, from the familiar sidewalks. Ethan traced daily from the oak trees he'd stand under each evening, eyes shut, whispering, "I'm listening to the trees just last night." At 7:41 p.m. Ethan had tugged on his gray hoodie and said, "I need to walk and hear them." Mark had ruffled his hair, kissed his forehead, and said, "Back before dark." Okay. That was the last time he'd seen his boy. Now Ethan was in another state, shaken and alone. Discovered by strangers, Mark didn't register. Dropping the coffee mug until the shards bit into his foot, the burns snapping him back. "Who took him?" He growled, voice low and dangerous. The man stammered. He mentioned housing authority security, something called Crestwood Pines. Mark's stomach dropped. That was their HOA, the self-righteous suburban clique with more rules than sense. Lording over their gated community. Like petty tyrants, they'd abducted his son, his gentle neurodivergent boy, for walking home, then discarded him across state lines. This wasn't an overzealous mistake. It was a calculated assault. His pulse thundered. War had been declared. When Mark and his wife Laura arrived at the Fort Smith Child Services shelter, they didn't wait for pleasantries. They barreled through the glass doors, a storm of desperation and fury. "Ethan Hensley. Where is he, Mark?" demanded his voice, cracking, not from fear, but from a bony weariness. No sleep could cure a social worker ushered them down a dim hallway reeking of cheap disinfectant and worn carpet. She mumbled about giving Ethan a sandwich, trying to comfort him, but Mark barely heard her over the hammering in his chest. Then the door swung open, and there he was. Ethan sat hunched in a metal chair, knees pulled tight to his chest, still wearing yesterday's clothes, gray hoodie torn at the collar, jeans streaked with mud, sneakers stiff with dirt. His backpack lay beside him, crusted and unopened. His dark hair was matted, his face pale. He looked up, eyes blank for a heartbeat. Then recognition sparked. He sprang forward, crashing into Mark's arms, then Loris, then back again, clutching his father like a lifeline. His hands shook, fingers digging into Mark's shirt, breath rapid and shallow. "You're okay, buddy," Mark whispered, cradling his son's face, though the words felt hollow. Ethan didn't speak. At first just clung tighter, then in a voice so soft it barely broke the silence. He said, "I didn't break anything. I didn't hurt anyone." Laura stifled a sob. "They said I broke rules." Ethan continued. "Said I couldn't walk alone." His voice trembled. "I was going home. I know the way I always know it, but they said I was loitering, that I couldn't roam unsupervised." He paired the words like they were alien, memorized from a script he couldn't grasp. Then his expression shifted, eyes widening, lips quivering. "They put a bag over my head. He blurted, "I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe. I kept saying, I live there. But they said I didn't follow." Policy tears streamed down his face. "They said I was a risk, said people were scared." Mark's gaze dropped to Ethan's wrists. Angry red welts circled them, left by zip ties. He turned his son's arm, gently tracing the marks. Laura's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling over a risk the community Ethan muttered, staring into. Nothing. Mark's heart didn't just ache. It burned. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Someone had decided his sensitive, harmless boy was a threat. Restrained him, hooded him, and dumped him 300 miles away like trash. Laura pulled Ethan close, rocking him while Mark sank back, staring at those marks who had dared to do this, who had given them the right. This was personal now, and he'd make sure they paid. As district attorney, Mark thrived on precision. Not panic. 2 decades of prosecuting liars and predators had taught him how systems bent rules into weapons. Sitting in his shadowed home office, blinds shut, he pulled up Crestwood Pin's gate camera footage at 7:48 p.m. Ethan appeared calm, hands in pockets, walking past the Oaks, then Travis Malone, a security guard. Mark recognized, fired from the sheriff's office for brutality. Rehired by the HOA Strout. No hello, just a barked order. Ethan stepped back. Travis lunged, yanking his arms, securing zip ties in moments. Ethan was shoved into a white van, no plates, no markings. Mark's jaw clenched as the screen went black. He opened the HOA bylaw pages of jargon, hiding a bombshell section. 9.3 allowed temporary removal of anyone causing concern to ensure peace. A scrolled note added roaming teens equals loitering threat. Consider off-site transport, if repeated. This wasn't a one-off. It was a system. Laura stood in the doorway, silent since watching the footage. "This is kidnapping," she said, voice brittle. Mark closed his laptop, stood and met her gaze with cold resolve. "No," he said, "it's force under false authority against a minor without consent or cause. They use policy as a weapon, and now they'll face mine." He grabbed his keys. "Where are you going?" she asked to remind them. He replied that, "I don't just prosecute strangers. I take down anyone who thinks they're untouchable. This is war." Mark didn't hesitate. He called the county sheriff. Then a federal task force contact from trafficking cases by noon. Black SUVs and CPS vans rolled into Crestwood Pines. Residents gayed as agents in vests stormed the HOA office. A prim brick building with cameras and etched glass doors inside. Chaos. Rained agents seized a server and unlocked a closet, revealing hundreds of files, children's names, photos, labels like loiterer and threat. Mark walked in the air, shifting with his presence. He lifted a file for kids. Faces stared back. "You tracked minors," he said, voice low. "You labeled them criminals." An agent flipped through another folder. "This is a targeting operation, illegal and unauthorized." As Travis was cuffed, Mark stared him down. "You assaulted my son. Built a system to excuse it. Logs and a behavioral protocol for HOA minors draft showed 3 years of this madness." "This is premeditated abduction," Mark said. "Federal kidnapping." The story erupted headlines, screamed HOA kidnaps. Autistic boy dumps him. 300 miles away, protesters swarmed Crestwood Pines. News choppers buzzing overhead on day 5. Patricia Evans faced cameras in a cream blazer, cool and unrepentant. "We ensure safety." She said this child's behavior was suspicious. He didn't respond when addressed. "We acted per protocol to prevent a threat," calling Ethan a threat. Lit a fuse. Outrage flared. Parents of autistic kids led the charge, signs reading, "My child isn't your enemy," outside her home. 7 days later, Mark filed charges. State of Texas 5. Patricia Evans, Travis Malone, and Crestwood Pines officers. Kidnapping, endangerment, conspiracy. He took the case himself in a packed courthouse. He said, "This is about power. Run amok. A private group playing judge and jury beyond the law." Witnesses' parents fin for their kids. Disruptions testified. Evidence of years-long surveillance buried the defense. Travis got 14 years. Patricia 11. No parole. The HOA was dissolved. GAT torn down, bylaws, voided control, handed to the county. Outside, Mark stood with Ethan, speaking as a father. "If you think power lets you harm a child, I'll find you not just as a DA, but as a dad." Applause rose. A father's win. A month later, Ethan began healing, walking with Mark. and Laura listening to trees again. The Ethan law banned HOAs from restricting kids. Freedom nationwide one night. Ethan asked, "Are you proud of me?" Mark smiled more than anything because you still hear the trees. That was the real victory. Ethan's peace restored and a system crushed for good. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with family and friends. Thank you.